Okay,
Yeah.
now I'm ready.
Yeah,
Yes.
we have to fire someone in the production.
We did fire someone in the production.
Yeah, that. Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So as you can see, it's the fancier version of the presentation, and we had some very interesting changes. 14 wing nuts that contributed 44 changes. I suggest we just go and see them.
Awesome.
So the first change is about state for the simulator. So before we look at the example here, let's get a short recap on what's the simulator. So in Wing, we have what we call guarantee to work, which is essentially if it works on your machine, it will work on the cloud. And the way we implement that is by providing the component called the simulator. Essentially, the simulator simulates the cloud and its behavior. So you can run into odd behaviors that you didn't think would happen when you wrote the code as early as possible when you're testing locally.
Yeah, so I want to just say that we usually kind of think about we look at this stuff and we've been looking at this for a long time. New bucket, new counter. We know exactly what it means, but you kind of reminded ourselves that we need to remind everyone. Basically, kind of what's when the developer is using Winglang language in order to write this code. It depends on the target of the compilation. What this bucket and this counter, what's their actual implementation? One of the implementation is the simulator, and now we have a state for the simulator, right? That's the high level.
Correctly. So essentially, what Chris, which is one of our beloved team members, he contributed that part, and what he did here is keeping state for the simulator between different compilations. So I think it's better explained through this example.
Okay.
It's a very simple example, very similar to our Hello Wing example. So essentially we have here a bucket, a counter, and a simple cloud function. And when this function is invoked, it just adds another file, file-0, file-1, based on the counter value.
Right.
So let's say I take this and I use our Wing console to basically interact with the cloud function. So
Okay.
I interact with the function and I can invoke it. And here I invoked it 4 times. So 4 files have been added to the bucket.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So right before Chris's change, if now I would make any change, for example, like add another bucket, as you can see, bucket number 2 here.
Oh, nice.
If I add that, then the whole state of the bucket would be erased, would be reset. So Chris's change made it so that even though I add the other bucket, the state that was inserted previously remains. So this is very useful for more complex tests when you're starting doing some tests and then writing your code. And obviously the Wing console hot reloads. So you don't want to have to click your way through testing all the time in the similar manner. So from this change on, by default, the simulator will retain your state.
It's the simulator that retains the state. So any resource basically knows how to deserialize and form out of a volume. And then basically when I write my code, when I reload the app, I still have the previous state.
Exactly.
Is there a way to reset the state?
Currently, no.
Okay.
Good question. If one of our viewers want that, more than welcome to open an issue for that. And I imagine it's not very hard to implement.
So every time, I mean, even if I close, I do Command C and I rerun. I mean, when is this? Do you know if it's when in a single cloud run or between
I
two?
think it retains it. I think it keeps a list of files on your computer. So basically, it's gonna retain even throughout different sessions.
Okay, so I can do cloud run twice, and I will have interesting.
I believe so.
Is that okay? Interesting.
You can always delete the files locally. For now, I mean, it's a new feature. We're looking to test it out as we any other feature. We want to see and feel how it feels like, and then we'll decide where this goes.
Yeah.
It seems very useful for the last couple of weeks.
This is Chris.
This is Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Good job.
Okay. Before I go to another thing by Chris, I want to ask the audience, you, myself.
Oh yeah, nice.
Can you spot
Nice.
the error?
Yes. It took me. It took
I'm
me.
the last option.
It took me some time, and the reason it took me some time because I'm used to not being an error. Because and the error is that this function declares that it returns a string, although it doesn't return a string, right?
Exactly. This is an anonymous function, a closure, if you may, and it declares that it returns a string, but it doesn't. And Chris just added that. He added an error, and that this function should return a value. And if it returns a value that is different from the type that is declared in the signature, obviously it will also indicate that. The compiler will shout.
Right. Nice. Great.
Some interesting areas where he also added a fix here is basically, so function number 2 that you see here, I explicitly stated it returns void, but you don't have to do that.
Okay.
I did that just for it to be very clear that we're not returning anything. And obviously, if you don't return anything, you don't need to return anything if you declare that your function returns void.
Okay.
The other more interesting example is what happens when your signature is to return an optional. So in that case, we went for the ergonomic option, and in that case, you don't have to return anything as well. So that's Chris. Another one by Chris.
Yeah, interesting.
Gary is awesome. He adds tons of awesome power into the standard library of Wing. And what you can see here, he added invoke async. So Cloud Function already has the invoke method. And let's say it in this simple example. Basically, we have a simple Cloud Function that takes a while. So we're sleeping for 5 seconds, and then we increment counter. So let's take a look at the test. First, the counter is at value 0. Then we invoke. Now, since invoke has to wait before it returns, then we see that the counter has already incremented to 1. But if we use invoke async, which is what Gary added, then it returns immediately, and the counter remains at value 1. Only if we sleep longer, then the function does what it's supposed to do and also incremented the counter by 1. So that's useful for some other issues. Why would you use?
Yeah.
Well, I'm guessing, so all of the tools that we added in the standard library are for different cases in the cloud. Sometimes you want to wait for the result of your function, and sometimes you don't want to wait. There's no reason to wait. So this is for all these cases where you don't really want to wait. You just want to fire that function to do its job, and maybe it doesn't have any effect on the remainder of the code that runs.
Yeah, but I think I'm wondering, I mean, I don't think we have the defer keyword actually working right now, right? It's not.
No.
Yeah,
we don't.
I think there's a difference between defer fn kind of invoke function and calling invoke async. There's some difference, but I'm not sure what the difference is.
Currently, as you said, we don't have.
Yeah, we don't have defer right now. Right. Okay.
Not entirely sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, I'm sure we don't have.
I'm not sure why invoke async. What's the difference between calling invoke async and defer invoke? I'm not sure. I think there's a difference, but I'm not sure what it is. I think Chris once told me what the difference is, but I can't recall. Awesome.
Okay, we'll have to bring him on the next show.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
Okay, next thing. So this thing is in very early stages, but we're adding support for TypeScript using TypeScript to enjoy some of the greater benefits of the Wing framework. So you can actually Wing compile a main.ts file. And that's here is a very basic example. And let's just see what we have here. This is TypeScript. It looks very similar to Wing at this point, but there are some key differences. So you can tell there's no bring cloud at the top.
Right.
The import statement, the first one is just the library that we put in place, or actually Mark McCollum, who I am lucky to be replacing. He built this library to basically connect between TypeScript and Wing.
Right.
And the second import is just our cloud library. It's going to change, but I'm not going to go into a lot of details here. You can see that the syntax, the developer experience that we are currently providing is that you have to write a main function that receives the app, and then you can write your code like here, new cloud bucket. And it's important to say that at this point, you can already use that to compile to simulator or to run it as a simulator or wing it.
Right.
And then you can use the console, or you can also deploy that to the cloud.
So this code here that we're seeing, it's TypeScript code, and I can run or wing it this TypeScript code.
Exactly. And you can also do Wing compile and dash platform TF AWS, and then you can compile it to Terraform.
Right. So this is fairly new. Can you talk a little bit about why are we doing this?
So we want to see, as with many other things, there is a lot of value that comes from using the Wing standard library that is not tightly coupled to the Wing language. Although we are big believers in the concept of a cloud-oriented programming language, we feel that there is also a place in the world for using the Wing standard library, using familiar programming languages like TypeScript. We may have others in the future, but we're definitely going to start with TypeScript. It's one of the most common languages in the cloud. So this integration is mainly for that. It's to allow easy entrance into the Wing framework and all the concepts, the abstractions, the cloud bucket, the cloud abstractions on top of the existing cloud providers. And it allows you almost the same experience as working with Wing, with some caveats. I mean, it's not going to be as nicely coupled with the cloud as Wing is.
Yeah, but on the high level, we're here to solve the problem of kind of cloud, kind of serverless application development in a way. And you can solve this with Winglang, and now you can solve this with TypeScript. We're working on this, that you can solve this with TypeScript. And there's pros and cons to this, to different types. And we want to deliver this solution to awesome.
And it already gives some capabilities that are not very easy to obtain with regular cloud frameworks. For example, this already provides the local simulator.
Right.
So you can work locally and iterate fast.
Right. So you can do Wing compile, as you mentioned, Wing compile, Wing run, anything. Awesome. Exactly. Great. Thank you. It's a great job, Mark. This is going to be exciting to see how this evolves.
Yeah, I'm betting that you're going to have Mark here next, and he'll going to show you some more.
Wow, that's a good idea.
Cool stuff.
Awesome.
Okay, as the last contribution, we actually have AutoWork, which I don't know if you can see the logo, the image that he picked for himself, but apparently he's a cat developer.
Okay.
Which is it's something I admire. You gotta admire. So I love this guy. He got right into it and added some nice contributions to the compiler. Here we identified that it creates confusion where you can declare structs in different areas of your code. So we just limit it to the top scope, so to the top of the file, basically.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, so right now he added that error message,
Rich.
and that's another close, tight to make the ergonomics and your code more readable.
Yeah,
And
it wasn't working. I mean, this thing wasn't working, but it was allowed in the language. We had to decide whether to make it work or just make the compiler, make sure that the compiler is not.
and it's always easier.
Yeah, it's much easier. And great work, great work.
Make
Thank
it-
you, Artwork. This is awesome.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got for you today.
This is great. This is great. The team is making great progress. You're trying to take Mark's position. I like it. I like it. I can understand.
Healthy competition.
Yes, healthy competition. I like it. And thank you very much for doing this, man. It's this is Mark is on vacation because of the holiday season, and thanks for doing this, and thanks for sharing and sharing back to the community, giving back to the community, kind of showing what we have ready and what people have made. And thanks for all the contributors. And
Thank you so much to our contributors.